Everybody, Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles. We have a dear friend with us again. She comes and sees us every, few months and checks in. Our friend Jane Kleeb, who is the chair of the Nebraska Democratic Party, who we collaborated with a lot last cycle. Who helped run, help win in the Blue Dot, one of our important wins in 2024. But she's also, since we spoke to her last, taken on a new role where she's now the president of what's called the Association of State Democratic Committees, the ASDC, and as a vice chair of the DNC and kind of the new part of the new team that's coming in. And we're really excited to do a check-in with Jane. Jane, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Simon. First, I just want to say, I know we're going to dig into some things, but I absolutely love reading Hopium every day. I like it because it's different from some of the other kind of newsletters that I subscribe to. You give this like detailed insidery view of politics, which not everybody has, but you do it in a way that is accessible to everybody. And then you provide action. That is something that like I can't even point to another podcast, blog, Substack that does talk about the inside game and here are the problems, but then says, here's what you can do. So I just so deeply appreciate you for that.
Well, and I appreciate you raising that because I think it's what makes the Hopium community so dynamic and interesting, and why I love this project so much is that from the very first day, we were a do place, right? We were a place that was focused more on making stuff happen in the world than just talking about it. And it was in part because it was a way of channeling our anxiety, frustration, worry as a way of taking all that worry and then anxiety that we all have about what's happening and putting it into concrete action that's making our democracy better and our country stronger. And and I, to be honest, Jane, and you know this being a party chair, all the good ideas that you have actually come from people on the ground, right?
That's right.
And you just learn. And so Hopium, because we're now 2 years old, almost everything that Hopium has done, other than my original idea of writing about politics, has come from people in the community suggesting that we do things. And the other thing I'll tell you that I think you and I have discussed in our private conversations, the other thing that's really important about Hopium is that we have this daily chat at the end of every post, and it's a vigorous discussion every day about what's happening. And I learn so much from that. I can't tell you how much that I learn about what's on people's minds and how are they seeing things and what's bothering them. And it becomes this incredible feedback loop that I get every day from people all over the country, right, with disparate
So great.
ideological beliefs and everything else. And I think that all of us in this business, setting up these kinds of feedback loops, right, and where you're getting daily or frequent response to what we're doing is so essential to making sure that we're learning and we're keeping our feet on the ground, right? We're touching grass, to use that
That's
phrase
right.
that people have been doing. And I think it's, as somebody, you and I have both been doing this a long time, when you are not listening is when you get in trouble,
Yep.
in politics. And it's when politicians get in trouble, right? When they're not listening to peeps. And so anyway, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm just grateful to the community to allow me to get up every day and do all this and hang out with people like you. And so
Love.
I really wanted you to come on to do a couple things, right? One is to give sort of general reaction to early days of the new team. I've been counseling to everybody that we need to give you and Ken and everybody a little time because you came in without a ton of capacity and resources, and yet the country wants the DNC to be massive and huge, and you guys have to do. But I wanted to specifically start by talking about the People's Town Hall concept, which I think is actually kind of a big swing,
Mhm.
and for people who've been wanting the DNC to do more, get in the game, this is sort of the first big kind of undertaking, and it's also really unique to the current moment, right? In the sense it's a collaboration also with the House Dems and with the
Exactly.
state, with you guys, the state chairs and the state party committees. So talk a little bit about, as somebody who's both in Nebraska but also part of the national thing, how this all came about, the
Yeah.
theory behind it, what it means to you, you think about how, what we can do to respond in this moment when we're all trying to wonder about how much more we can do. This seems to be like an early important first thing out of the box for you guys. And so Just tell us what you think about how this is
Yeah,
all going.
absolutely. It was important to both Chair Martin and I that we are organizing and that we're showing that we're organizing. Both Ken and I are organizers. Most people don't know that, they know Ken from being chair of DFL in Minnesota. And then having the job that I have now, being the head of the State Party Association, the ASDC. But he was an organizer first. He started a clean water ballot campaign and was organizing environmental and climate groups literally before climate and environmental work was cool. So, and I've obviously been a longtime organizer on Keystone XL and Obamacare and lots of other issues. And so organizing at the local and state level is very important in how you will see Ken and I continue to lead. So the first action that came out of the DNC and the ASDC and the DCCC joined us was action, right? We wanted to put these town halls into effect. And then it didn't come out of a meeting between just Ken and I. It came out of meetings that I was holding with all the state parties, asking them what they were seeing on the ground, what they were hearing from their membership, what did they want to see us do as kind of the first organizing activity. And it came out of conversations that I was having with leaders like you and Bill McKibben of what you all are seeing and hearing from folks. Those conversations really matter. And I think, what Hopium folks should know is when you send tweets at leaders like myself and others giving ideas, we see them, right? I mean, sure, some people have staff that are reading their tweets, but I certainly still read my own tweets and my stuff on Blue Sky where I'm spending more and more time. So we decided that we were going to hold not just town halls in the targeted DCCC targets. And we're doing that because that's important. Those are seats we have to win in 2026 to reverse kind of what's happening at the federal level. But we challenged every single one of our state parties in all 57 states and territories to hold at least one town hall in a Republican-led district throughout the month of March and April, while the Republicans are hiding from doing town halls in their communities during recess.
And you hosted one of the first ones, right? The
I
very
did.
first one was in Iowa with Governor Walz. You hosted the second one this past
Yep.
weekend in Omaha, right? Can you talk a little bit about how did it go? I mean, just describe to us, what the room was like and just what kind of vibes were in the room. I mean, talk about you were there at one of the first ones. I mean, how did it go?
First, we hit capacity literally within 8 hours, and some people were wondering why we didn't move to a bigger space. Well, one, we only had 48 hours to plan the town hall. Like, we rolled out these town halls and we immediately went into action. And Governor Walz has so graciously decided that he's going to help us out with various stops along the way in March and April. So we had 48 hours. We chose the community college because we really wanted a venue that is reflecting our values. I didn't want to go to a hotel. I didn't want to go to a big arena because this isn't a rally. This is a town hall where we really wanted people to feel like they were meeting each other and being able to have access to Governor Walz. So we capped it at 400 people, although the community college let us bring in more chairs. So we really had 500. And people were very excited. We had comment cards on all the chairs. So when they came in, they could either send a message to the Democrats, they could send a message to the Republican member, or they could ask a question that we were then collecting and asking Governor Walz. We pulled all those, we asked various questions, but we also had 4 people representing different parts of the 2nd Congressional District. We had a Offutt Air Force current service member who isn't able to deploy because she's trans. We had a farmer. We had someone who has really embodies the American dream, and an undocumented immigrant who has gone and now has her degree and is putting her kids through college. So we really wanted to make sure that we were both getting organic questions, live questions from the audience, but that we were also really telling a story, because it's important for us as Democrats to not only hold these events, but to also have content that we continue to share and tell our story and tell our narrative so that the Republicans aren't defining us. And this is something that I've learned from you. You were like, there's one thing to hold a town hall, there's another to then have pictures and video content that you can then share over the next month. So you're constantly making sure that people know that you're doing things, that you're hearing them. So it was an amazing activity. We were there for 2 hours with Governor Walz, and First Lady Walz joined us as well and got overwhelming feedback. The last 20 minutes, we said, okay, now the mic is back to you all. We want feedback on what the Democrats should be doing. And that, to me, was quite frankly the most interesting part of the event. hands went up immediately. Everybody
Of
has
course.
really good ideas, really good feedback. You can imagine that the vast majority of people were like, we want the Democrats to draw more bright lines, more red lines to the Republicans, saying we will not cross. They definitely had lots of concerns around the budget, which we're hearing clearly, and we're seeing lots of feedback from folks. But they said, we want more of this. We want more actions, more town halls, more places for us to engage with each other.
Well, and the idea that Governor Walz stayed for 2 hours,
Yeah.
right? It's just incredible, right? I mean, what an amazing guy he is. And
Yes,
I don't
that's
know that we actually saw the best of him in some ways during the campaign for reasons we can all debate. I think moments like this is when he really shines, right? Is
mhm.
just being around folks and talking to them in plain English. And what's you said something that was interesting. I when I asked you to come on, I went and looked into the Nebraska media to see how the event got covered. And
Yeah.
oh my God, did it get a lot of coverage, right?
Yeah, it got a lot of coverage. And we're working with a new content creator now. His name is Jazari, also an immigrant from Africa. He does amazing work. I also heard from you and Bill McKibben and others who were like, Jane, you need to find out who the content creators are in your state. I am 51, and that's not the immediate world that I live in. And I think this is very similar to when I was a young Dem. I was telling all the older DNC leaders and candidates, like, you need to talk to these bloggers. And so I understand when people are like, you need to find the content creators, because I was saying that about bloggers back in the day.
Yeah.
So totally on board. So Jazari was not only there, put it on Facebook Live. We had 7,000 people watching it on Facebook Live. But he's now clipping the town hall into more shareable content. Governor Walz has already put out. He had a much better, quicker video team. And those views are just, getting a lot of shareable content. And I think that's what we have to do as Democrats. We can stay in this like doom and gloom space where Republicans want us constantly angry at each other, or we can start to point out constantly the cruelty of Republicans and push back very clearly on that, but also show what we are doing in action in community. And that's the space that I want to be in as a leader of the Democratic Party.
Well, and it was the coverage of the event was great. Um, the sense of that you were listening, right? You could see it in all the images, right? That it wasn't at a podium talking down, right? It was down at people's level, just even the way you set up the whole thing, where it was clear that people were engaging with you. And so what's happened? What should we expect now in all the other states? I know that events are getting scheduled. I've been
Mhm.
sharing the link to the schedule, encouraging Hopium members to go to these events and to bring, if they're lucky enough to be in an area where one of these are coming, to go to these events and bring everybody they ever met, right? And organize and get in there early before they close out. I mean, what's your sense about the arc of this and how many more are getting scheduled and what should we expect?
Yep. More events are literally getting planned every day. The DCCC targets, there's about 10 to 13 of those. Those will all be scheduled by the end of the week, and those will be rolled out on the Democrats.org website. It's also on our social media. We keep on pushing out the link. The other states are all planning theirs right now. Some will hit, but by the end of the March recess, which is on March 22nd. Others will hit the next round of recess in April. So they'll be in between March and April. And so you'll continue to see this type of push of us holding town halls because Republicans are terrified to meet their constituents. But then the next step for us is to be holding nationwide actions, nationwide organizing moments for folks about every quarter. So town halls are March and April, then we'll take a month or two off to plan the next one. I'm really pushing to do a bake sale. I don't know if you remember the Move On bake sale in 2004. It was like a huge hit. Everybody held bake sales. They raised money for then John Kerry, but this would be raising money for your state party. And we could have a special section for the billionaires where, the cakes are a lot of money, and then, prices for the working class. But we want to do fun activities that engages people. Obviously, we'd be registering voters at the same time we were doing bake sales. And then we're going to do big activities around voter registration month, which is in September. As you know, partisan voter registration is one of the big things that I'm very concerned about. Our party has basically basically ceded that ground to nonpartisan groups. And that first conversation with a voter has totally been lost, and we haven't been able to bring them into our family. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I know you're a big proponent, and this is in my sort of 6 recommendations for what the Democrats need to do after 2024. Number 1 is about, reimagining our next coalition and doing partisan voter reg to build towards that. And I think that we've discussed this, I think last time you were on, and I've talked about it at Hopium, that people don't really know that we, in a time 20 years ago when we had a lot less money, there was an effort made to figure out what parts of our work could be pushed off to C3s and C4s in order to conserve the hard dollars in the party apparatus. But that was also, we have a lot more money now, and we're not living in a time of such scarcity. I mean, obviously we have to be wise with every dollar, but there are things that I think the party can claw back
That's right.
from the outside groups because frankly of the Democratic grassroots and their willingness to fund this kind of activity. I mean, one of the things I was really proud of at Hopium in our first 2 years in the last cycle was how much money we raised for Democratic Party organizations
Yes.
and put people like you and Anderson Clayton and Ben Wickler and, Ken and others front and center in front of people, because historically the party, in our family, the party was kind of seen as like this thing over there, the state parties that was necessary, but there was like, oh, it wasn't where the cool kids hung out. The
No,
cool
we were
kids,
definitely seen as like the
yeah,
loser kid.
yeah,
And
right. The loser kids.
yeah, yeah,
And now the state parties are the cool kids.
yeah.
And, and I'm frankly proud of our normalizing in our community. We had more than 10,000 people give to the North Carolina Democratic Party,
It's remarkable.
from across the country. We raised over $1 million for Anderson in the last cycle. And I had pushback, right, from folks about why give to the party as opposed to candidate. And I discussed about how when you give to the party, you're actually helping dozens of candidates, not just a single candidate. And I think so. The couple more questions I have.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about other things the state chairs are thinking about now, in addition to this kind of programmatic activity. I mean,
Yeah.
you're in a very different place where one of your own is now the chairperson of the party who understands the operations of the state parties and the centrality, I think, that we have to reassert in our family to the state parties. What other things are you guys kicking around and thinking about, Jane?
There's a couple things. One is our state parties communicating on a regular basis to our state donors and our base that we are the only statewide infrastructure in every single state and territory that is dedicated to not only building county and party infrastructure, but also to electing Democrats. There's no other organization. And I love the Indivisibles and the Move Ons and all these other groups that are out there doing really great work, but nobody has the infrastructure in every single state in the reach that we have across each of our states with our county parties. So really leaning into that brand, that image of us as being the core center of politics in our state, that's something that state parties are communicating stronger and being more forceful about, and starting to be the nucleus of town halls and other actions and organizing events that sometimes state parties would just be like, well, there's kind of protest groups who are doing that. And I'm like, no, get in there, roll up your sleeves, you organize those protests, because we all know that some of these groups like 5051, first of all, we don't even know who leads some of these groups. And second of all, for all we know, they're building lists to then use against us as Democrats. And we're kind of seeing that already with some of these groups. So it's really important, I think, for us as proud partisan Democrats, because I am a proud partisan Democrat, that we build our partisan infrastructure, because that is the thing that is long-term and viable, that will help all Democrats up and down the ballot. The other thing that we're working on is making sure that our staff is ready and nimble to meet the moment. A lot of times we had the traditional field political communications directors, finance team, but we really need to get more organizing folks. And so, for example, Nebraska just hired we only have enough money right now for part-time, but 2 part-time rural organizers who are literally going to counties. We're pooling in the voter files, super volunteers, counties that we don't have a county infrastructure in yet. We're pooling those super volunteers. We're essentially holding coffees and sometimes beer and politics events, asking them to come, explaining, you're a great county. Look at all of you in the room. There's 10 to 20 of you. There's no county party infrastructure here. Who today, we're not leaving this room until we have a county chair, a vice chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. So we can start building that county party infrastructure. We didn't have the money to do that before. And that's obviously so critical for all of our candidates as they're running statewide. So that's some of the things. Then we're also creating a Project 2028 within the State Party Association. This is not to do the issue stuff that Project 2025 did. This is to specifically focus on the electoral pieces that if we win the White House in 2028, what do we want our president to do? Is it same day voter registration everywhere? Is it automatic voter registration? Pieces about redistricting. So we're creating a committee to really think through the logistics, federal laws that we would want to see, as well as state laws. So we start going on the offense. I am so tired of constantly being on the defense as Republicans come up with all these creative laws to move forward their agenda.
Amen to that, sister. I mean, I love that idea. Let's talk about that. I have some thoughts for you about that. I'll bring this to a close, Jen, because I know how busy you are, but I want to make a pitch for one thing that I've been writing about a lot, which is, I think and I've discussed this with Schumer's people and Jeffrey's people, is that I think as we think about, building this, what I call the ferocious and effective opposition that we need now, and given that we can't just wait to 2026, that Trump and Musk are breaking things now that will be very hard to repair, and we have to do everything we can to blunt them and block them now, is that I think that as we think about the party, what we need to think about in our mind's eye. I used to tell the story that, when you think of the war room, you think of 20 sweaty kids drinking Red Bulls, producing TikTok videos, but we really need to see the war room as 6 million people now, right? And who want to go to work and be partners with us, as I say, partners in the fight, not donors to the cause. And I just want to encourage you, as you guys get out from underneath this kind of early day stuff, that there has to be a lot of thinking about how we think of the party now as 6 million people, all these new grassroots groups that have grown up all around the country, Indivisible, Swing Left, and all the similar groups to that, postcarding groups that have sprung up, the new pro-democracy media that is now becoming more potent and powerful, the traditional party apparatus and all of our allied groups, right? That all of that needs to be stitched together into a thing.
Yeah.
And where, and one of the things that I was really pushing you and frankly the DCCC and the House Dems on this idea of organizing in the battleground red districts, because we actually have, we have donors, 6 million donors. We have hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands of donors in every single congressional district that if we ask them to become part of some kind of project, many of them would say, absolutely, where you been all my life, right? And I think that this notion that we can't go into red places is because of lack of imagination, right? Not because of capacity. And I just encourage you to think about this one thing to operationalize, because I know you guys are already doing so much, is that we need to figure out a way to take this whole new thing we have and stitch it into a new thing, right? Specific, but particularly in starting to learn how to treat the 6 million, not as people that we milk as ATMs, that we milk for money to allow us to do our work, but as people who are willing to go do the work with us, right? As partners in the fight and not donors to the cause, which then requires us to liberate that relationship from the people that just raise money, right? Because right now, part of the reason, I just want everyone to realize this, and I haven't spoken about this yet, but part of the reason why Democrats have been a little bit slow in engaging the Democratic grassroots is that there is no system right now in place for our politicians in Washington to have a communication with any of you that isn't about raising money. It just doesn't exist, right? Yeah. And so now we have to have a relationship that is about communications, is about work. It's about the way that Hopium talks about it every day, right? We're going to go to work and hear that, we could easily be doing one of the things I've talked to Hakeem's team about is that they could be doing a Thursday night YouTube show every week where Hakeem comes on and says to the whole country, listen, this is what happened this week. And give a talk. Now I'm going to have Rosa DeLauro come on and do a 10-minute briefing about the budget, right? And then another person comes on. And now what we're doing is we're treating all of our supporters as citizens and
Yeah.
big citizens and as partners and not as donors. And I think there has to become a revolution in the way, because I think that what happens is for people like Chuck Schumer, to be honest, the crush of raising money, and you know this from being his party chair, means that a huge amount of his time when he's actually out talking to people, he's talking to donors and he's
That's
not talking to people that write books or think tank people or strategists, right? That their time is so pressured
right.
that in essence, like they can't talk to their supporters because that communication is all about raising money. They don't do town halls because it's all about spending that extra time with donors. And part of what we have to do is to create a new understanding of what the party is. That
That's
it's
right.
not the 445 people that voted for you and for Ken. And it is 6 million proud patriots who want to go to work as partners with us to go save our democracy. And we've got to figure out a way to put them to work, right?
That's
Is
right.
part of our job and not make work, right? Like these town halls are very good and really encouraging. It's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on is that I'm super encouraged by this. I think this is really innovative and smart, and you did it as a partnership, right? And it wasn't everyone off doing their own little thing in their corners, right? You guys came together. But I think the big project is how do we reimagine this stitching together this opposition, the 6 million people, into a fighting force in a time when America needs them to go to work on behalf of all
Yeah,
of us.
that's right. And this is exactly what we're thinking about. And so I don't have the perfect answer, but I want to tell you about a
Yeah,
couple things that we are thinking about,
yeah,
because then hopefully your Hopium community can continue to give us feedback. In addition to like these big 4 actions that we're going to have a year, like maybe the bake sale, the voter registration, the town halls, etc. Those will start to be really publicizing, of course, on our social media. Those will be pushed at the state party level and the national level. We're also, Chair Martin is creating a war room. And that's going to go more on the offense as well as on the defense of punching back very hard. That will be a clear avenue for us to be communicating with leaders like yourself as well as other content creators. But the way to then get to the public is what we're thinking right now. We're thinking it's going to be once a month. Maybe it needs to be more frequent. And maybe we need to do a little bit more of like the House and Senate are doing their own versions on YouTube as well. But we
yeah,
want to do once a month where we call it Dems Live is the
yeah.
placeholder name at the moment, where we bring together party leaders and national leaders, as well as folks like you. And, it's a fast moving kind of like a Pod Save America, very fast, energized, where we are engaging with folks on YouTube. They're, engaging live, asking us questions. So we are giving updates. We're telling the call to action. We're talking about how we're going on defense and where we're going on offense. So voters and activists feel more connected to us. Right now, you are right. The only times they see us are, one, if they catch us on MSNBC or Fox News or some of the other major, news outlets, or if they get emails from us. We want to be more engaged with folks. And so that's one idea, but we are really listening and open to other ideas because we want to make our party better, stronger, more resilient, more responsive to the base.
Okay. I mean, I could talk to you for 3 hours, and but I got to let you go because you got work to do. I got work to do. But listen, I'm just really proud of you and Ken and the whole new team, and some of whom I don't know very well, and I'm excited to get to know them. For, I think what people don't understand, perhaps, when you live in Washington, as long as I have, right? You can live a large chunk of your life without being around voters, right?
Yeah,
And when you're a state chair, that is not true.
not true.
When you're a state
They see
chair,
us everywhere.
yeah, like you are in it, man, and
Yeah.
you're close to people. We can get far away from people here, right? And and it's
Yeah.
probably, and just the crush of the business here, but you and Ken and the new team, you guys all come from outside of Washington. You've been around voters in these recent elections. You have had to build parties that were responsive in the way that we're describing, right? In taking advantage of the new energy that we all have and the new grassroots. And I think that people who are watching this and in the Hopium community should, I don't know they understand how much of a sea change this all really is from where we were, which is that the old party was a party for 7 states
Hmm.
and in 7 or 6 originally, and then we sort of pushed North Carolina into being a battleground
Yeah.
state in 2024. That was frankly one of my goals of supporting Anderson, is to make sure that the Biden and then the Harris campaign didn't run away from North Carolina as we've done previously, and which we didn't. We were in there. But this is a sea change, everybody. And I think that what Jane said, and what I think is what I know to be true about her and Ken and Roger Lau, my dear friend who's the executive director, and Libby, who's the deputy executive director, who, by the way, is great,
Fabulous. Yeah.
fabulous, amazing. I've worked with her closely. There's a new day here. And I think the exciting thing for all of us is that we get to be part of inventing this next thing. This is what we talk about at Hopium all the time, that by the work that we're doing, we're actually building the opposition. We're not talking about it, we're not bitching and moaning about it. We're doing the work to actually build it. And through ideas, through the work we're doing, because what happens is we try stuff, we learn, and then we do
Yeah.
more of it or run away from it, right? And so I just want to say, Jane, you're amazing. I'm so proud of you and Ken and
Thank
the new team. And just, thanks for the update. I'm glad you
you.
got to go hang with Governor Walz. He looked
He's pretty
he
amazing.
looked super happy. I
I
mean,
got a big dad hug, so don't be jealous.
he just looked so happy. I mean, it was really nice to see it. I mean, he just
Yeah,
looked happy to be
he's
out with
very
people.
happy.
Yeah, he's very happy.
I
Okay.
can do this work. Yeah, I can do this work just in closing because I'm guided by the energy of our base. So please, as a party base, active volunteer, as all the Hopium folks are, keep on sending us your ideas, your constructive criticism, whether that's directly on social media or you email it to us. We definitely see it. That's how we change course. That's how we improve things. So please keep on giving that to us. And then just a shout out to not only the Nebraska Democratic team led by Precious McKesson, but we have a new executive director at the ASDC, Lauren. She's a rock star. The only reason that Ken and I can do our jobs is because we have great teams that work really well and deeply believe in the mission of building our party, electing Democrats. That's our mission at hand, and we can't do it without you.
Amen, sister.
Amen.
Okay. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks,
Keep up
Mike.
the good work.
All
And
right.
we'll have you back in a few months to check in on everything.
Can't wait. See
Okay.
you.
Bye bye.